Welcome back to the Dormant Politics Podcast. My name is Justin Fisher.
I'm Nolan Flaherty.
And I'm Austin Vertine, and on this podcast we discuss the results from the 2018 midterms.
So to be honest, the 2018 midterms kind of went as expected. The Democrats did end up taking a majority in the House. The Republicans picked up a couple of seats in the Senate. So we're going to be taking a look at the shocking results in the House of Representatives, a couple of specific races that were kind of surprising. We're going to be taking a look at how the Republicans picked up a couple seats, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the most contested gubernatorial races around the country.
So right now we do have some undeclared seats that are still kind of hanging in the balance with all these recounts going on. But to clarify, we have 227 seats that went to the Democrats so far, 98 that went to the Republicans so far, and there's actually 10 undeclared seats that are going on. A couple in Florida, I know, in the House that are not positive yet. And as far as the Senate, there are 51 seats confirmed for the Republicans so far. Likely going to be a couple more once Florida finishes up, and a few other states have recounts going on. 44 for the Democrats, and there were 2 for other parties. I'm not quite sure which other parties.
Those are Bernie
seats.
Sanders and Angus King. They're both senators from Vermont and Maine that are independents.
There you go. Other parties, Bernie Sanders, socialist, whatever you want to call him.
Bernie Sanders took the dub. Sweeping victory.
People love him. I mean, people love the guy, even though he has some of the more radical views of our country.
Vermont is considered the most liberal state in the country.
So here is what these results mean for the country. So now the Republicans have lost their supermajority since they lost the House, meaning that there is at least some representation of an opposition to President Trump's agenda in the House. Now, it would have been better if the Democrats would have picked up a few seats, but like we talked about last podcast, the Democrats were in a very unique position in a negative way in that they had to defend a lot of their Senate seats, and a lot of seats that they thought they might have been able to hold on, like in Indiana and Missouri and North Dakota. They all lost to Republicans as Democratic incumbents, which was very disappointing. Another state that was disappointing from a Democratic perspective was Florida. Now, we thought that Andrew Gillum, the Democratic governor candidate, we thought that he could have been a great hope in that state, that he could have provided a more progressive platform in that state. But unfortunately, it looks like he's going to lose to Ron DeSantis. And Bill Nelson, the incumbent Democrat senator, it looks like he's going to lose to Rick Scott in Florida. So
now remember, Rick Scott was a term-limited governor. He was the governor of the state of Florida, and now he's running for U.S. Senate. So to say this guy's a career politician would kind of be an understatement.
Well, Bill Nelson has had 4 re-elections, so he's been in the Senate for 24 years now.
Jeez.
And look, I don't know what to believe about these Florida elections right now. We got a lot going on with that.
Florida's always a mess.
Florida, yeah,
always a mess.
Always a mess. But let's take a look at what Donald Trump here said about Florida. In a recent tweet, of course, Donald Trump, one of the greatest minds of our generation on Twitter, said that the Florida election should be called in favor of Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis in the large number of ballots that showed up out of nowhere, and many ballots are missing and forged. An honest vote count is no longer possible. Ballots massively infected must go with election night. Now, I don't know about you guys, but it sounds a little bit like these ballots have like Ebola or something, massively infected. I don't know what's going on, what kind of ballots Trump is looking at, but I don't think he wants to see blue go to Florida, for sure.
It's funny that he said ballots came out of nowhere. I mean, most likely those mail-in ballots that just came in. Mail-in ballots are shipped. They have to be postmarked on Election Day, at least in the state of Illinois. I don't know how it differs between other states, but I mean, they usually show up after Election Day, so that was probably the massive, quote-unquote, massive amounts of votes that showed up out of nowhere, according to the president.
So what we can take from this is that the blue tsunami that I thought that the country was going to have,
Purple ripple,
it didn't really turn into a tsunami or a wave, as a matter of fact. By all accounts and all measurements, it was a ripple. In some parts of the country, we elected Democratic representatives, yet kept Republican senators. So I don't know what to take from this right now. And also, there was a trend where there were Republicans that were elected, yet left-wing referendums that were passed, especially in the state of Florida, where you had DeSantis and Rick Scott. Looks like they're going to win. Yet they passed a referendum that allows 1 million felons to vote. and have the right to vote now. So I think that the lesson from this for the Democrats is that left-wing ideas, they're quite popular in this country. A lot of people are turning toward socialized medicine. A lot of people
they're
are
popular right now.
A lot of people are looking at minimum wage increases, things like that. These are popular things that the Democrats should be hammering every single time they go on the news channels and every single time they go out to campaign. And again, there's too many milquetoast Democrats that will not go for these policies. People like Joe Donnelly in Indiana, Claire McCaskill in Missouri, and you see what happens. They lose by 10 points.
Well, I think what you see with the Democratic Party is there's a lot of good ideas out there from the left. I'm not going to lie. There are some ideas that could really change and influence this country. Something like minimum wage is something to think about. Lowering taxes or raising taxes is something to think about. Obviously, an ideal of the Democratic Party. But what the Republican Party does best, especially with President Trump, is making their agenda and platform so easy to understand. In the 2016 election, if you want to see why President Trump beat Hillary Clinton, it's because he could provide clear answers on what he wanted. And people, Americans, again, we're not always that smart. We're not masters of policy. We just want to know what's going to happen. And President Trump outlined that to many Americans. We're going to build a wall. These direct connotations within his words that he used, and people love that. And I think that's the problem with the Democratic Party, especially when it comes to elections and trying to run a campaign, is it's not always clear what the goal of the party is, but there are definitely some ideas to consider from the party that we could take away in the future.
But I think when you look at midterm elections specifically, it's almost not even related to the issues. I mean, this is kind of what related to Barack Obama as well, and George W. Bush, to be honest. The midterm elections are kind of a referendum on the president. So I think, in the Senate, when you only have a third of the Senate seats, obviously the elections kind of differ, so that's kind of why Republicans picked up the seats, because they're not necessarily in liberal states that were electing these senators, at least in the majority of these elections. But in the House of Representatives, because the term limit is every 2 years, that really gives Americans an opportunity to say their opinion on whether or not they like the President of the United States. So with President Trump having approval ratings that are under 40%, it's no surprise that Americans decided to vote blue on the ballot this November.
Yeah, in 2010, the Democrats had a supermajority going in, and then they lost the House by a lot, but they actually retained the Senate. It's very similar to that time. I think that there are particular areas in this country that the referendum on Trump is a lot more impactful than people think. In places like the Rust Belt, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Iowa, we saw Democratic leaders get elected, we saw Republican incumbents go down, and we saw Democratic governors finally come back into the fold. So I think that is a good sign, especially for those states that used to be reliably Democrat that shockingly went to Trump in 2016.
So, I mean, in the state of Illinois specifically, we saw some pretty shocking election results. Back home in the 14th Congressional District up north, which includes Oswego, Aurora, Plainfield, I think up in Geneva as well, pretty much all the suburbs surrounding the city of Chicago. The 14th Congressional District saw Lauren Underwood, the Democratic challenger to Randy Hultgren, actually won by about 2%. So Lauren Underwood is now the congresswoman from the 14th Congressional District. She beat out Randy Hultgren. Randy Hultgren had 20 years of political experience, and Lauren Underwood was a registered nurse, did not have nursing experience, but did have the education, did have the credentials.
I mean, that's a myth.
And worked. It's not a myth.
It was a claim made by the Hultgren campaign on the last day.
And then she ended up working under the Department of Health and Human Services under Barack Obama. So she ended up taking that victory. And down here where we go to school in the Springfield area, actually the biggest district in terms of size is the 13th Congressional District, where Rodney Davis holds the seat. So Rodney Davis was running up against challenger Betsy Dirksen Lodrigan. I worked on Rodney's campaign, and the election was incredibly close. CNN actually called it at about 9:55 p.m. that Betsy had won the election. But it turns out about an hour later, Rodney Davis had took a 1.4% lead, so CNN called it a little bit early.
You would have thought that CNN had learned after the Bush-Gore presidential...
To wait.
To maybe wait a little bit to figure out if they called the election, because they did actually call that in favor of Gore. So definitely interesting to talk about. We saw the Democrats obviously pick up a lot of steam within the Illinois overall, and we saw Bruce Rauner just totally get defeated by J.B. Pritzker.
You could literally still vote for Bruce Rauner after he lost. Like, I think he
conceded around 7 o'clock, I believe.
I think he conceded earlier than that, didn't he? I'm pretty sure you could still, because polls closed at about 6, and I'm pretty sure you could still vote for Rauner after he already conceded to Pritzker. I think his goal was try to, I don't know,
he still
slow
won 33%.
down the embarrassment.
Yeah, he won 33% of the vote.
But Pritzker won close to 70%. Sorry, it was 60-something percent, 61%, I believe.
Yeah, it was around that, yeah.
And then the two third-party candidates got less than 3%. Sam McCann and Cash Jackson won about 2.5% of the vote. Cash Jackson. Anyway, so Peter Roskam, the Republican again up north, he lost his seat to Sean Casten, which was actually pretty surprising. So Peter Roskam, I feel like he's a household name. I think a lot of people knew Peter Roskam, and he lost to a Democratic challenger, so that's pretty shocking to me. But the gubernatorial election was not shocking at all. The Attorney General for the state of Illinois, Kwame Raoul, ended up taking the win for that, beating out the love of my life, Erica Harold. Kwame Raoul, all of his ads were kind of just posing with Barack Obama, so it's not necessarily surprising. Susana Mendoza won. Pretty much everything at the executive level in the state of Illinois went blue, and it was not very shocking.
So what does this mean for Trump going forward? Well, he's going to have some opposition now, so he won't be able to pass as many things as he'd like. I'm not sure if there's going to be an impeachment movement through the House of Representatives, because they can call to impeach the president. That would be foolish, considering the Senate is now even more Republican than it was. The Senate is concerning from a Democratic perspective, because if we were to lose Ruth Bader Ginsburg or any other Democratic justice...
She just broke her ribs. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to die in about 8 minutes.
So, if that does happen, the Republicans with ease would be able to confirm another Supreme Court justice.
Thank God. Give me another Antonin Scalia, another Brett Kavanaugh, another Neil Gorsuch.
Nobody needs another Brett Kavanaugh.
This would lean the Supreme Court to levels that we have not seen in a long time toward a partisan...
I think the Burger Court is considered the most conservative court in the 20th century in modern politics. So I think if we will see another justice die or retire in Trump's presidency, most likely. So we will see the most conservative court that we've seen for decades.
And again, that would be concerning, because the Supreme Court is supposed to uphold the law of the land and not be partisan in any way, but we know that idea is a farce in most cases. So to have a Supreme Court that leans one way would be concerning for the rights of workers, for immigrants.
Oh, okay. Everything
for Roe versus Wade. There's a lot of things that are on the line with the Supreme Court.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, real constitutional originalist.
That claim is to say that constitutional originalism is the only way at looking at the Constitution.
It's the proper way to look at the Constitution.
For example, Fourth Amendment, unwarranted search and seizure, right? What is unwarranted search and seizure? That's up to interpretation.
Not necessarily. You have to take in the historical context of the time, and you have to take in the Constitution as it was written. An unwarranted search and seizure means...
So cruel and unusual punishment is in the Constitution,
yeah,
and the death penalty was legal during that time. But as times change, shouldn't the definition of those terms change as well?
The death penalty isn't necessarily unconstitutional.
I know you're against the death penalty.
That's correct.
But in legal terms, Antonin Scalia was a proud supporter of the death penalty.
The death penalty isn't unconstitutional, but it doesn't mean I have to support it. A lot of the laws, a lot of the policies that we debate and discuss don't necessarily have to relate back to the Constitution. A lot of the things that you believe are still constitutional, and I still disagree with them. They could be handled at the congressional level, rather at the legal level. I think the policies or the issues or the cases that are taken up at the Supreme Court level are some of the most overarching questions of the law of the land, and they shouldn't really be handled at the congressional level.
So now that the 2018 midterm elections are over, we can now speculate as to who is going to run for the Democratic nomination in 2020.
Beto.
Beto is one of the names up there. He's right now third, according to bookmakers.
He specifically said that he was not running in 2020.
Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are right now 1 and 2, and then there's a group of 3 senators: Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, that are all in contention. So it'll be interesting to see how the Democrats pick their candidate. Will it be somebody who is anointed, like a Joe Biden, like maybe a Bernie Sanders, or maybe an outsider like Beto O'Rourke can come in and galvanize the Democratic base and give Trump a challenge?
Thank the Lord, by the way, that Ted Cruz won that election. That was way too close for comfort.
That would have been a little bit scary for all the Zodiac Killer's friends in the Republican Party had he lost.
I mean, Ted Cruz, that was his first term, so I mean, this is his first re-election campaign, and it came a little bit too close for comfort.
He didn't take Beto seriously at the start.
Beto's a grassroots guy. I think he's a real good guy, in my opinion. I think he's somebody that could pose a threat to Donald Trump just because of his message. I mean, one of the main things he's emphasizing is people over PACs, which I think is something great, believe in PACs or not. But, he's just one of those grassroots guys. He's really a guy that I think most common people can relate to, and that might be something that the Democratic Party needs going forward, as they haven't been able to really relate to the common person. There's just no direction of the Democratic Party. I don't see the direction of the Democratic Party right now.
I don't either. I think we're at a time where the ideas in the Democratic Party are changing, and we're starting to internalize and debate between ourselves which way are we going to go. And to be honest, the only way that I see going is further to the left. I think we need to start embracing some of these ideas because they're bold, they're ambitious, and they can take us to a place that we really haven't gotten to since the New Deal. And the New Deal has been getting piece by piece, little by little, ripped apart over the last 70 years.
Oh, that's so false. What?
I think we need a New Deal Democrat to come in and provide a bold agenda for this country.
I think the GOP is only going one way. And it's not going to be polarizing the country. It's not going to be going farther left. The GOP's got only one way to go, and that's up, baby. The GOP is taking the dub in 2020. The House is going red. The Senate is staying red. And we're going to get a couple more Neil Gorsuches confirmed to the Supreme Court. Because if there's one thing Mitch McConnell can do, you can give that man anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
And he'll put that guy in the Supreme Court.
He looks like a turtle, but he does
Mitch McConnell is great at his job. Anyway, I think Beto O'Rourke might be able to put a challenge up to Donald Trump in 2020, but unfortunately for the Democrats, I think Beto O'Rourke said he's not going to be running in 2020. So it looks like the Democrats are stuck with Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, or Elizabeth Warren. And I would rather have, a piece of chicken as the President of the United States than Cory Booker. Cory Booker and Kamala Harris are tools. That's it.
I mean, Donald Trump's not too much better. In terms of just evaluating character.
In terms of evaluating character, you're 100% correct.
I know you're a big fan of Trump's, all of his policies and everything.
Amen. They're better than anything Cory Booker can do.
Policy over person is really what we're looking at in these next coming elections.
Amen.
Which is kind of sad.
For now. It is kind of sad. You're not wrong. But Cory Booker is president, man. Cory Booker loves himself some Cory Booker. He is Spartacus, and he might be ready for 2020.
Now, there are already polls that are out there for this, but this election, again, shows that polling methods are dying. They're flawed. There's something wrong with polling because the races that were in red states with Democratic senators, they were polling that it was going to be too close to call and it was going to be really close, and they ended up being absolute blowouts. So I don't know what's going on with polling. It could be because people are using landlines less and less. It was much easier to poll back in the day. An online poll simply can't be trusted because there's just too many trolls out online. So it's tough to get a barometer for what the nation wants and who the nation wants to be as their leaders.
Polling is very difficult to trust. And honestly, I got to agree with the president here. A lot of polling ends up being close to voter suppression. I mean, if you have polls that are constantly saying that this election is going to be a blowout, then why would the other party who's going to lose come to the ballot? And then it ends up being a little bit closer. And if the polls weren't necessarily there in the first place, then you would have had a lot higher of a voter turnout.
I mean, the problem is there's no really way to regulate polling. I mean, you can independently look at statistics and come up with your own polls. Really, anyone can release a poll if they want. So they definitely do have a big impact in terms of our election system, but I hope to see them improve so they don't cause any more controversy within our country.
So now that the elections are over, there's going to be a lame duck period for the politicians that are going to be leaving in January, and for us too, because there's not going to be a lot of political talk that's going to happen from this point until January 20th something. So we need something to talk about.
We're going to need some submissions from you guys, so if you guys are interested, send us a DM on Twitter. Send us an email at dormroompoliticspodcast@gmail.com. Sorry, I know that one's lengthy. But, yeah, we're going to be looking for stuff to talk to. I know a couple people have come up to us, talked about, maybe talk about immigration coming up, especially with the Honduran caravan stuff going on. But, yeah, definitely we'll hope to see some more stupid tweets from Trump and other stuff to talk about, because we know in the next 2 months, politicians really aren't going to be doing anything because of the way our country is set up and how we transfer power between politicians. So we're definitely going to be looking for things to talk about, and we're excited to bring you new material on Spotify and Apple Music.
Now, I just want to say regarding the Honduran caravan, if it snows in Mexico, they're done. They're dead. There's no chance that they're coming here. I know it just started snowing out here in Springfield, and it would just be such a shame if the Honduran caravan were to be hit by a snowstorm that would completely wipe out the population.
They are making an absolute trek across borders. And
that's a lengthy march, man.
But yeah, we're going to definitely be talking about that and some other topics coming up. So
nothing is more desirable than the land of opportunity.
This is not the Trail of Tears. This is the Trail of Fears. White men's fears.
You're right. It is a topic of fear for the Republican Party.
Immigrants are stealing our jobs.
What I don't get is that none of these people that are bitching about this caravan will ever meet any of these people that were on this caravan. They're probably going to go to Los Angeles. Like, let's be real about this.
Actually, the town that I live in, Aurora, is actually like the 6th largest city for illegal immigrant population, which is kind of surprising. Illinois is the 6th largest state for illegal immigrant population in the country. It's kind of surprising that a lot
Are
of
you mad about it?
Not necessarily.
No?
I'm just saying
Are they stealing your jobs, Justin?
They're not. They're not.
In fact, I think
No,
they're
not
enhancing your experience in the City of Lights. The cuisine is fantastic.
It's incredible. So, I mean, in the city of Aurora, it's hit about 200,000 people, probably about 250,000 people, because honestly, the illegal immigrants are not exactly counted in the census.
Facts.
So it's about 250,000 people that are probably living in Aurora now, and about half of it is split between white and Hispanic. And there's obviously a black population that's kind of scattered about. But the eastern side, I think, is it the east or the west side of Aurora that is like completely Hispanic?
Eastern.
It's the eastern side of Aurora that's literally completely Hispanic. Like, all of the businesses, all of the signs are solely in Spanish, and the cuisine is exceptional. So I can't be upset.
I'm glad you're very cultured in Mexican cuisine, Justin.
It's wonderful. It's authentic. It's real. You can't speak English in the restaurants. So I can't be angry that Aurora is an epicenter of illegal immigration.
But there's definitely some anger going on with legal immigration, some more topics in our country, and we'll be sure to address some of that in the upcoming podcast. So I'm Nolan Flaherty.
I'm Justin Fisher.
And I'm Austin Vertine. Thank you for listening, and come back next week.